I haven't even talked NBA Finals too much here, Brandon, but we have a trade, and when there's a big trade, I run to it. I run to it. I love talking about these things, even though I love actual basketball. I can't help myself. Okay, Brandon Kravitz is here, host of In the Zone on 96.9 FM that is down in Florida, pregame host for the Orlando Magic. We're going to talk about a trade that the Orlando Magic made and its ripple effects around the league, because I do think, Brandon, it's going to be very important for how some other things may fall into place. First of all, how are you doing? Thank you for joining for the first time on the channel.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here. I'm doing great. I was on vacation for a week, and then was able to fit in one post-game episode of Buckets as I got back. That was the first bit of work that I did, which was Friday night, end of game 4. Was the first time I cracked a mic in a week, which is very rare for me because I'm on the air all the time, fortunately enough to do so. And then Sunday, it's Father's Day. I have a 5-year-old. I'm out at the neighborhood pool, swimming around, or playing whatever, hide and go seek with some fish and all of a sudden my phone starts blowing up while I'm at the pool, just trying to enjoy a relaxing day. And of course, that's when the Desmond Bane trade goes down. So it's been a lot of family time, a lot of downtime, and now it's time to get to work. I have not talked about this trade yet with anybody, so
this is great.
I'm excited to rip this Band-Aid off.
All right. Should have also mentioned we work together at Action Network, where we both participate in Buckets. We've actually done a bunch of episodes together at this point. Brandon has hosted many of those in place of Matt Moore. Okay.
In fact, the first one that I ever did,
that is true.
You were on that episode.
That is true.
Memorable moments for me.
Yeah, and that was when the company's made some progress since then. Is what I'll say. Move forward now. All right, Brandon, let's do this. Desmond Bane goes to Orlando. I'll outline the trade real quick. Desmond Bane for Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and 2 guaranteed years left, because you'll probably opt in next year, at about $22 million each. Also, Cole Anthony's expiring contract and 4 unprotected first-round picks, number 16 overall this year. The Suns pick from 2026 and the Magic's unprotected picks from 28 and 30, with a swap in between that's lightly protected in 2029. All that for Desmond Bane. At knee-jerk reaction, I was like, this is a lot. And then the more I thought about it, the more I looked into it, I was like, no, this is actually a really good trade, potentially for both teams. What was your initial reaction when this went down? Because you said you were poolside. Were you like, oh, that's a lot, or oh, Desmond Bane is going to be in Orlando?
Yeah, I mean, that was my first reaction. Was the second part was that the Magic got a guy that can help them win in the immediate future, and that was the goal going into the offseason. They weren't going to have the free agency money to spend like they did last year, which, by the way, they did not spend well, which is part of the reason why they had to give up as much as they did to get Desmond Bane, because the KCP deal, that was a bad contract. It just didn't work out. So that was my first initial reaction. I did a segment the day after they got eliminated from the playoffs on my show, because I was railing against my audience throughout the short duration of the series against Boston. All Magic fans could talk about is, what's the offseason going to look like? I'm like, just enjoy the playoffs. You waited all year to get here. Just enjoy this moment. And so that would frustrate me. The day after, though, it was like, okay, now it's time to have these conversations. I had 2 names at the top of my wish list, and I had like 3 different lists. I had pie in the sky, I had realistic, and I had I'm happy to settle for these guys. My pie in the sky options were Tyrese Maxey 1, Desmond Bane 2.
Wow.
So I could not have been happier. And we'll dig into the haul that they had to give up to get him, but just to give you an idea of how much I wanted the Magic to have Desmond Bane to begin with, he was number 2 on my wish list.
I really liked it the more I dug into it. One of the things that I thought was in Orlando's advantage was because Paolo Banchero's still on his rookie contract, which it's not like a true, like it's not the rookie contracts we grew up around, but it's still going to be only like $15 million a year next year, which is to say, this is like when you have a quarterback in football on their rookie contract and your team is all of a sudden 11-6, and it's like, oh, we could actually try to make a run here. Let's get him a big time wide receiver. Let's go out and get whoever the $30 million receiver is. You have a year where Paolo Banchero's still in his rookie contract before he inevitably gets his max. And it's like, oh, you can take in Desmond Bane's salary, no problem, and then kind of figure this out later. The team will get expensive, but at the same time, you can do this now, see what it looks like, and then reassess next year. If it's like, all right, what happens to Wagner? What happens to Suggs? If nothing needs to happen to them and you just pay more money to keep the team together, you could do that too. But Desmond Bane made $34 million last year, first of a 5-year deal. Then it'll be the 36.7 this coming year, 39.4, 42.2, and then 44.9 in 2028, 29 when he's going to be 30 years old, which I think it sounds like a lot to some people, but that is good value in today's NBA as the cap will continue to spike and NBA inflation continues to become a thing. And I think the fact that he's already locked into a deal is actually a good thing for Orlando, especially a deal that is going to age well with a game that I think will age well too.
Well, and I think that was part of what they were looking for. If they were going to go out and get anything that resembled a star, and I think that's another conversation to have about where Desmond Bane even fits into that conversation. But I would say, especially in the East, he's an all-star caliber player. This isn't LA. This isn't New York. The Magic, I think it showed a lot of self-awareness with the contract that Desmond Bane has already, and saying, we need to get somebody that's locked in to a deal because we don't want to get into a situation where they don't want to be here. This isn't glitzy enough for them. So let's get somebody that we don't have to even think about that. Age-wise, he fits the timeline because he's just 26 years old, but you also don't need to worry about the headache of having a conversation about any sort of upcoming extension. Does this guy want to be here? Because that's always part of the dialogue whenever people talk about, oh, we'll go trade for Kevin Durant. What if you get 1 year of KD and then he says, I'm out, I don't want to be here, this isn't good enough for me? I think when you deal for somebody that has multiple years left on their contract, that's just one less thing that you have to worry about.
Since becoming a full-time starter, Desmond Bane's finished fourth, second, and third in usage on his own team. We know why, because John Morant and also Jaren Jackson Jr., there was a year or two of Dylan Brooks in there, which is to say, though, and this is another reason I like this trade, he's not going to have the ball all the time because he can catch and shoot. He can play off of other guys. He's going to be a great release valve in the offense, I think, around Paolo Banchero and obviously Franz Wagner too. He'll probably be third in usage behind those two guys, which I think is a plus because that means Jalen Suggs could also save some energy for defending, of which I think he's defensive player of the year level good, Jalen Suggs, on the perimeter. And I'm looking at just not really needing the ball like that. And he can do things with the ball. Like he's gotten better as a playmaker. He's really good as a shooter, as a career 3-point shooter. He has an exceptional 3-point percentage. Like all these different things. I guess what I want to ask is, fit wise, what is the part that you think most excites you if you're watching the team?
I don't know what just happened.
We're all good. What is the part that most excites you in watching the team and looking at like, oh, here's how he can fit? You get me? Like,
Yeah.
What, like, because it's all right there, but I think what is the part that we should be focusing on the most, I guess?
I think what they've been after is they want as many players on the court in terms of the core guys that are going to play the most amount of minutes per game. They want as many players as they can get that can set up an offense to where you can't really predict what it's going to look like possession by possession. And Desmond Bane helps you continue to do that. Paolo Banchero can take the ball up and distribute, or he can just rush, he can just drive to the rim, and that can be your offense for a possession. Franz Wagner can do the same thing. Jalen Suggs, is not the world's best point guard, but he's good enough to do it here and there throughout the course of the game. And Desmond Bane is the same way. So it allows you to play this like amoeba offense where nobody has a defined role. It is just simply everybody's a threat. Everybody's a threat from most areas on the court, and we can kind of switch things up throughout the course of the game. I think that's where Desmond Bane helps out a lot. The catch and shoot is probably the biggest factor, though, because they obviously had to get better at that. The Magic were the worst three-point shooting team in the NBA, and they were definitely the worst by the time they got into the playoffs. And so getting somebody that can shoot, that doesn't have to have the ball in his hand, but can, if it's something that's asked of him, was exactly what they needed to go after. That's why he was number 2 on my list. The Magic needed to get somebody that didn't require the offense to run around them. Like the idea of Trae Young coming to Orlando sounds nice. I think it's more of an NBA 2K move than a real life move, because everything revolves around Trae Young. You can't bring somebody like that in and not play Trae Young ball. This still has to be Paolo and Franz's team with a really strong, efficient additive to that offense. And I think that's what Desmond Bane provides without losing your defensive identity. And when you start to factor all of that in, okay, somebody that can play make but doesn't have to have the ball in their hands, somebody that can catch and shoot and make threes at a really high clip, somebody that's not going to be exposed defensively or drag down your overall defensive rating, which is really the lifeblood of this team, and they're in their prime athletically. If you said, okay, I'm going to lay out all of those bullet points, how many players in the league are we talking about? That's why Desmond Bane was so high on my list. That is a really short list of players that fit all of that criteria. And then, oh, by the way, on top of that, the team that you're calling has to be willing to take your phone call, which also eliminates a good chunk of other players that you could have gone after. I think that list is incredibly short, and I think we could probably count it on one hand in terms of players of that caliber that can do all of those things that teams would actually be willing to deal.
Out of curiosity, who else was on your list?
So the pie in the sky list, I wish I had it in front of me. I looked for it yesterday. I listened back to the episode that I did about this, and I spent a lot of time talking about Tyrese Maxey. I then spent a lot of time talking about Desmond Bane. I am blanking on who is on the rest of the pie in the sky list. But I know that some of the other guys talked about Ty Jerome a lot. And this was more of like the realistic names. Nickeil Alexander-Walker. What was the other one? D'Angelo Russell was a name. Like, just got the Magic just needed to get professional buckets, and they don't have a lot of that. I'm gonna have to dig that up, because I'm sure I don't think I had more than like 4 names on the wish list, but I know that those 2 are at the top of it.
My guess is, because that shooting guard class, it's the same crop of guys. It's been like Bane, Maxey, that people will always compare it. Bane, Maxey, RJ Barrett, Tyler Hero, Simons, Anthony Simons. There's like a couple others I'm blanking on. How many of those guys were on that list? Probably just Bane and Maxey.
I think Tyler Hero was probably one of the names that was on that list.
That's interesting.
And then it's just players like that, like guys. But here's the thing: Tyler Hero is not a good defender. So here we go. He fits a lot of the criteria of what we're talking about. It doesn't fit all of it. Right. So that doesn't really answer. They can't.
He also needs the ball more. That's the other problem. I looked at this last night because I did 5 on the floor with Ethan Skolnick, and we actually talked about the Bane trade and how it could affect other things. And inevitably, Hero has to come up because, with the Heat, they're going to talk about just how it relates to them. And Bane versus Hero is like, it's a thing, basically. But Bane is a much, much better fit in Orlando because he doesn't need the ball as much. He's never led his team in usage, and Tyler Hero's led the Heat in usage for 4 straight years. That includes years of Jimmy Butler being there and obviously Bam. And he's their usage rating champion, which means he wouldn't fit necessarily next to Paolo Banchero and Franz Wagner in that same way.
I remembered 2 of the other names. Buddy Hield was one of them, and Miles Turner. who is
Miles
becoming an
Turner.
unrestricted free agent.
That's
I
interesting.
mean, he would still be on my wish list because if you could and I don't think that financially they could do this anymore. I think they're up against it too much. But if you could find some way to swap Wendell Carter Jr. out for Miles Turner, and then you're able to spread the floor 5 out if you want to, I think that would be really dangerous.
Well, to be fair, though, this is another interesting part of the Desmond Bane trade. I don't think Orlando's out of bullets. Now, from a draft pick standpoint, you don't have a lot left to play with, but you still have, just from a purely contractual standpoint, like in terms of matching salary for somebody, not Miles Turner, because I think Indiana keeps him, and if not, he gets overpaid by somebody else to the degree that Orlando can no longer do, even if they could to begin with. But Wendell Carter Jr. is going to make 10, and then his extension kicks in. But he's at 10.8 this coming year, 10.8 million. You still have Goga Batazzi at 8.3 this year, and then it descends to 7.6. One of my favorite things that Orlando's done is just hand out all these descending contracts, which I think is really,
that
really
is
smart.
that is their brand for sure.
So right there with Wendell Carter and Goga Batazzi, you're looking at around 20 million between those two. You still have, I mean, Gary Harris has a team option, a 7.5. I don't know what they're gonna do there. Probably decline it unless
I would think so.
Unless they accept it just to move him, but like I think they probably just decline that. But you have the Goga and Wendell Carter contracts, and it's like if you have about 20 million there roughly, you attach something to that. I mean, maybe you can get a big also. You know what I mean? Like, I wonder how far they would be off from like a Nick Claxton or something, but I don't think Nick Claxton, Wendell Carter Jr. is like a big enough difference for me to make that trade, for example.
Probably not. And they value continuity like crazy here.
Yeah,
so
I would keep Wendell Carter in that example. Yeah.
Plus, Angel Reese comes to the games, and I don't know how much value that adds, but that's at least part of it because they're.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. All of a sudden, I didn't know. So, sidebar, I had no idea that they were dating. And I'm like, why is Angel Reese at every Magic game? This is so random. But yeah, they're together. Rebounding machines, the two of them. But here's another aspect to this.
More so her than him, admittedly.
Well, for sure. That's her bread and butter. How does Mo Wagner factor into all of this? Because they had a log jam in terms of their bigs last year, and that sort of sorted itself out because all of them dealt with injuries, and Mo Wagner was actually out for the year because of the ACL injury. But having all three of those guys on the active roster, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. And with just how important, you look at a team like the Lakers that clearly needs to add a legitimate 5 to their roster. And there are other teams that are like this. And the Magic have 3 of them. Well, they have 2 right now, but I view Mo Wagner and Franz Wagner as a package deal. I think Franz is better because his brother is on the team. And I would think that, he's a max guy with the team, that he has some pull. Hey, I want big bro to stick around. They have a great relationship with each other. They play on the German squad together. And Mo Wagner's an energy guy too. So like, it's not like he's just there like Thanasis. He can actually play.
And he was hyper efficient last year too.
Yeah, and I think he could be the starter. So I think you could probably, I don't know, tell me if you think this is realistic, get a first-round pick back for Wendell Carter Jr. and then re-sign Mo Wagner and slide him into that starting 5 role.
I just wonder if Mo Wagner is going to be able to start the season healthy. I guess because he got hurt during the year last year.
He probably doesn't play until, I would guess, like early December.
Yeah, I think so. I think he doesn't start, but I do think if he did, he probably wouldn't play that many minutes either. Like, I think what they kind of want, or what they should want at center, is can they make their own Gaffley, which is basically what we were calling them in Dallas when they had you could play 48 minutes of Daniel Gafford to Derek Lively, like have one on the court at all times. Basically, it's kind of like a cheat code, and it's like, oh, you go from one good center to another good center. I think Orlando's like tried to do this, and I think with Wendell Carter Jr., injuries are always going to be a concern, but I think he's good. But I do think like, would I investigate upgrading that spot potentially? But I think even right now, if you're just looking at the team, Suggs, Bane, Franz Wagner, Paulo Banchero, Wendell Carter Jr. And let me ask you this: one, how good do you think? Like, where would you slot them right now? Because the not price wise necessarily, because you're not going to get value on that right now because the number is the
The
number.
number got slashed in half. I think that's
Yeah,
probably a little extreme.
you got to wait till other moves anyway. But I'm going to be looking at their over. I'm going to be looking at them to win the East. I'm going to be looking at them to potentially win a division. If Miami gets KD, I think that becomes an interesting sort of race between the two of them. And I'm not totally out on the Hawks for some reason. But I think Orlando like can be really good next year. And I thought that even before this. So where are you at with them just in general expectations and how they could stack up with the Knicks, whatever we see of the Celtics next year, the Cavs, another year of Indiana, who may look exactly the same.
Probably.
Where are you at with that?
Yeah, and I think that Indiana probably creates maybe a false expectation for people like myself who spend so much time looking at the Orlando Magic or wherever you're at. If you are a fan of or an analyst for an Eastern Conference team, you can look at Indiana's roster and say, well, my squad is as good as that. And if I start to look, I thought about this today. I was driving around and I'm like, would I trade Orlando's whole roster for the Pacers? And I don't think I would. And that team's in the finals and has won multiple games in the NBA finals.
I'm telling you right now, that team in Indiana is fucking up a lot of people's heads.
Exactly.
Because
that's my point. So you say, where do they
fire
slot
their
in?
Coach, y'all got Desmond Bane. Like, there's other teams are gonna be like, wait, they're in the finals, and it's like they might win the championship. That's
so. I think your question. I think your question is absolutely fair. It is valid. I'm not sure that the ranking matters as much as it used to in the NBA as far as how teams stack up against each other before the season starts. I think we're now in this era where it's a little bit like Major League Baseball was like this for a while until the Dodgers created a super team where it was just you had to be good enough and then get hot at the exact right time. College basketball can be a little bit like this.
Football, NFL.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of where we're at in the NBA right now. Is your team good enough to compete is like a binary question. It's a yes or a no. And then you just have to be healthy and flip that switch at the exact right time. That's my cop-out answer. But to not completely avoid the question that you asked, I'd probably have them firmly in fourth. I still think Boston's better. I still think the Cavs are better. Well, yeah, that's true. God, the Achilles. That's really going to fuck up their season.
Because I think with Orlando, what I would always say about this was, I remember asking Matt Moore, who we both work with, in a preview that we did here for the playoffs, which team is most likely to pull off an upset, you think, of the 7s and 8s in round one? And he said Orlando because of the way that they play against Boston. Even when Boston's healthy, they just can't score enough is the problem. And I think now I want, like, that's the series I would want to see next year.
I know.
You know, I want to see, although I don't think it'll be a 7-2. I think it might be a 4-5 or even a 3-6, depending on what happens with the Celtics. Another thing I wanted to ask you: is there pressure to win now in Orlando? Is there pressure to be 50-win team, top 4 seed, win a playoff series? You know, Coach Mosley, like, does he absolutely have to advance this, or are they going to look elsewhere? Like, how does this all sort of look in Orlando right now?
I mean, Tibbs got fired. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals, so every coach in the NBA lives on the hot seat. Yes, Jamal Mosley definitely needs to win. Last year they won 41 games, and their big three, Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs, barely played together all year. So when you take that into account, it was still a pretty impressive season. But that's also making an excuse for them. There's absolutely pressure. I think the pressure is more so on the front office, which makes this trade of mortgaging the future that much more interesting, because if this doesn't work out, it doesn't matter to those guys that they traded a bunch of future first-round picks. They're not going to be here anyway. Jeff Weltman's the president of basketball operations. Anthony Parker is the general manager. He was recently upgraded to general manager. John Hammond, formerly of the Milwaukee Bucks, was the GM for a while. He's still kind of hanging around in an advisory role, but they're all tied together. They've been here since 2018, so that's 7 years. And the first couple of seasons was about, let's just regain a little bit of respectability. They went to the playoffs with the Vooch, Aaron Gordon, Evan Fournier team. And then they realized what we all knew. That team wasn't going to get you anywhere. So they blew it up. And then they bought themselves some rebuilding time. Every front office goes through this where they come in, they assess things, then they blow things up. And then the clock really, truly starts. And so when they traded Aaron Gordon to the Nuggets and they traded Vooch to the Chicago Bulls, that's when the clock started. Then they got the first overall pick. They got multiple firsts, Jalen, Franz, both lottery picks, Paolo, first overall. This is now the first real move since blowing up the team to try and win a championship. And if this doesn't work, and it needs to work pretty fast, then we're going to be looking at a new coach. We're going to be looking at a new front office. And I always find it interesting when a front office that's sort of at their, I don't want to say they're on the hot seat. I just think they're at the natural end of the progression of how long a front office gets and the moves that you're allowed to make before your job is on the line. That timeline is coming up. And they're the ones that mortgage the future, and the ownership group let them. So it's interesting when you look at it from that angle.
Since 2022, Desmond Bane has played 22 playoff games. He is averaging 19.5 points, 5 rebounds, 2.6 assists, 43% from the field, 39% from 3, 90% on free throws. I don't know if some people look at that and be like, that's it. I think given that efficiency drops in the playoffs, that's pretty good. Still shooting over almost 40% from 3 in the playoffs, still scoring about 20 points a game. This is now a sample size of 4 seasons because we're going back to the 2022 playoffs. If you compare that to like another one of the shooting guards in his class, I use Tyler Hero, for example, 25 playoff games during the same stretch since 2022. 14 points a game, so 5 fewer than Desmond Bane. 3.7 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 41% shooting, 2 percentage points fewer, 29% from 3, 10 percentage points fewer, and the free throw is about the same, 89, 90. So to give people an idea, like Desmond Bane is not a guy who's going to fade in the playoffs. And I think this is important because when you're assessing the Eastern Conference, like you're making this move if you're Orlando for the playoffs. I throw those numbers at you, and you do what with that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's good enough. That's and I think his overall numbers are not going to be what forecasts his success, because he went from third fiddle on the Memphis Grizzlies behind Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr., and he's going to be third again, maybe even fourth, just depending on the way things go. So to me, it's going to come down to timeliness more than it is overall box score stats. But I mean, he's obviously shown offensively that he's good enough to get you buckets when you need it. And there's a lot of here's the thing where I say, the numbers aren't going to matter as much because it's still going to be Paolo and Franz's show when it comes to scoring the basketball. But with how bad this team has been offensively, there are buckets to be had. So I don't think he's going to have a problem filling it up, but I just don't think they didn't bring him in because they needed another 20-point per game guy. They needed somebody that can get them buckets when the offense stalls out, and Desmond Bane can absolutely do that.
I'm going to ask the somewhat hacky sports radio question.
Oh, I live in that world. Come on.
Same kind of. Is Paolo Banchero good enough to be a number 1 on a championship team?
I think he is. I think the 3-point shot needs to come around a little bit, and defensively, I think he needs to show a little more effort. There are too many of those moments where if you're watching the center of the court, Paolo's the last player to come running across the screen. You know, there's way too much of that.
Yeah.
I think you have to show the defensive intensity throughout the year that you are that guy. I mean, the best players in the league all do that, and they'll have their moments, but I think he's got to get better in that area. He's got to be a better 3-point shooter. But God, I mean, look at what he's done already.
Yes.
This guy, his playoff numbers are better than his regular season numbers, and he's only a couple of years into his NBA career. He just started legally drinking, so he is well ahead of schedule. I think he's got the mentality for it. He's got the competitiveness for it, and the overall offensive repertoire doesn't shrink. I mean, that's really the biggest thing, is the fact that he doesn't shrink. He rises to the occasion. I think he is good enough personally, but I think it's a valid question, though. I'll say that. But to me, the answer would be yes. And I will also say, hand up, I am a homer, by the way. I make no bones about it. Okay. I am not, if you guys, just in case you're curious, I work on the Orlando Magic broadcast team. I am not paid by the team. This is through my iHeartRadio affiliation. And okay, just to give you an idea of how this works. I'm not a paid member of the Orlando Magic, but I do work with the team.
You work with the broadcast network, not the team.
Exactly.
Yeah. People have to understand, because people think like, there's a difference. When you work for Yes, you don't work for the Nets.
Yeah. Like, I'm a homer, I'm not an employee. And there are different types of answers that you will get from both. It's just the reality of it. If my paycheck said Magic on it, there's certain things that I wouldn't say. Yeah. So that is not the case, but I am a believer in this team. And I think they've done a really good job so far of building the right kind of team that can win a championship in this league. I mean, look at who's in the finals right now. They are built in the exact same image, and in terms of versatility, in terms of depth, and and that's another part of this equation. Obviously, the conversation today is about Desmond Bane, and I think a spinoff of that is Paolo. Are Paolo and Franz good enough to lead you there? Depth wise, they still have guys that are growing into those roles. We didn't think Lou Dort was going to be like this key piece to a championship winning team. He is that now. Anthony Black, Tristan Da Silva, players like that are going to, I think they are going to me, I've seen signs that they can become those sort of really high impact role players. And I do think there is one more move to be made for this team. They probably have one left, because Desmond Bane, as good as he is in terms of adding that 3-point shooting efficiency, one guy isn't going to take you from bottom of the league to top 12. So they're going to need to add somebody else that is a highly efficient shooter. And I think that at that point, I'm pretty confident that this team can compete when we get there to the end of the season.
You know what I forgot about too, and mentioned in the contracts? I forgot that Jonathan Isaac is making $15 million this year coming up. Also 14,
he had a brutal season too.
After. Yeah, but he's another guy. I mean, if you're gonna pay to move off him, like that might be too much. But like you can basically cobble up together. Like if you're throwing Isaac into that Wendell Carter Jr. Goga mix, that's roughly $35 million. That's like something legitimate that you could actually play with there, which I'm interested to see if they do anything with any of those pieces. I want to, before we get out of here, talk about the rest of the league in terms of, all right, there's a price set, so to speak. Now there's going to be ties inevitably. There already have been two. Kevin Durant, what's the asking price going to be? Is he going to be worth more than Desmond Bane, even though he's 80 years old and playing for his 36th NBA season and has had 17 injuries already? But he's still Kevin Durant, still, which is ridiculous. How do you think this affects potentially other deals? Like now that a market's sort of been set.
I think this is different just because of the age of the player. I think that the Magic paid a lot more than what you even have to pay to get Kevin Durant because of the longevity. How much longer do you really have with KD? And I think teams are willing to part ways with the future when they feel like they're bringing in somebody that is going to be there for the long haul. I compare this deal a lot to Mikal Bridges. Bridges went for 5 first-round picks.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially what Desmond Bane went for 4, but also part of that 4 was please take this KCP deal. All of the
Yes.
picks the Magic traded were not for. That's the thing that I think is really being missed by a lot of people. Desmond Bane was not traded for 4 first-round picks. He was really traded for 3. And then they said, will you please take this KCP deal off of our hands? We'll also give you another first-round pick.
Yeah. And then we'll swap a 5th one.
Right.
Whatever.
But I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that he's already under contract and he's 26 years old. KD is nearing the end. He is going to go wherever he ends up. He's going to be what he's been pretty much the whole time, which is a short-term mercenary. So I don't have the deal in front of me, but what did Jimmy Butler end up going for?
Oh.
Because that to me, that's a more similar type of trade than what we're looking at with Desmond Bane.
Desmond Bane. Let me see Jimmy Butler. Jimmy Butler, the extension was 2 years and 121 million. Oh boy. Look, Jimmy Butler is one of my favorite players ever. But at this stage, I don't know if I would have done that. But I feel like that's the cost of doing business. That trade,
I know Wiggins was a big part of it.
I have it in front of me. It's a 5-team deal.
Oh, okay. So this is a little involved. But ultimately, what did the Warriors end up, or the Heat end up with?
So let's see. Oh, the Heat, I can tell you, they got Davion Mitchell, who ended up being the best player they got back for the rest of the season because Andrew Wiggins wasn't great. But it was Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, Kyle Anderson, first-round pick from this year, which is going to be 20th overall. At the time they got it, it looked like it could have been a lottery pick. It was also top 10 protected, but that's going to convert this year, and the Heat are going to pick at 20th overall with the Golden State pick. And they also got rid of, in that deal, Josh Richardson. So it wasn't just Jimmy Butler. But that was it. And also a different situation just because Jimmy Butler had the organization by a barrel and they were like, all right, we gotta get rid of this guy, whatever. Because Jimmy Butler is basically, it's like the strategy is always pay me or I'm not afraid to make this look very ugly. And then every organization is like, all right, we'll see. And then Jimmy Butler and his agent do the thing. And then it's like, oh God, all right, we got to sell this guy low. And then he goes to the other team and he's awesome.
Yeah. I just wish there was there really is no through line with all of these deals. I mean, Luka Doncic went for Anthony Davis and Max Christie.
Now that one different for other reasons. I think to your point,
there is no baseline for star or would-be star players in the NBA.
It's Mikal, I think. It's Mikal.
That's yes. I think so.
I would say they're on the same tier of player. I think Desmond's obviously better, possibly much better offensively. I would say much better offensively. Mikal's better defensively. Although I think the gap on offense is wider. And I think for what the Magic need, it's no doubt that Desmond Bane's a better fit. And I think fit matters so much in the NBA. We underrate that sometimes, or a lot of times. But I think that's the one where it's 5 firsts and it's that type of player. Look at what 5 firsts goes for a number 3, basically. In the Knicks case, Mikal ends up being a number 4, even though he should be a number 3. But OG Anunoby was better than him this year. I think that's what it is. So I do wonder how it affects other deals, but I agree. It's probably a case by case basis. To your point,
it case by case, and I think age by age. I think that we are seeing a different sort of structure of what these deals look like depending on where these guys are in their NBA careers. And then you do have these other trades like Luka and who knows what a Giannis trade is going to look like that just sort of play by their own rules. But to me, Kevin Durant probably ends up going to a team what the Phoenix Suns end up doing is just completely pivoting away from winning. And so what they bring in isn't going to look like a direct one-for-one, like, hey, you give us your good players, we'll give you Kevin Durant. I don't think it's going to work like that because I don't think KD wants to go to a place where a team gets gutted so that they can add Kevin Durant. That's just not going to work. So it's going to have to be, if the Suns move off of KD, they are likely pivoting away from winning, and that is that trade is going to take on sort of a life of its own.
Even though they're going to want to remain competitive, because that's what
I'm just not sure.
No, I agree. I think Phoenix should actually like blow it up, try to get their picks back, whatever. Like I actually think they should go the other way completely, but it looks like they want to keep Devin Booker and build around Devin Booker, which okay, whatever. Whatever. I think as far as the trades go, we're gonna see it really come down to fit and also how much the organization wants to win. Like Orlando's like, we feel like we can do this right now. And as I mentioned, I think an underrated part of this is Paolo Banchero still being on his rookie contract for one more year. So Orlando's like, let's take in a big contract now. Let's do this now. Let's see what it looks like for a year and then reassess after. Ideally they would go on a 50+ win team who I think the benchmark expectation I would have for Orlando specifically is 50-win team, win a playoff series. And I think that's a successful year. If they get to the Eastern Conference Finals, even better. But I think that's what you're looking at. If they don't win a playoff series, then I think they might like change the coach. They might, do something like that's
definitely true.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to at this point. I think Mosley, who I think is a really good coach, just has to win a playoff series. And maybe two, but hopefully just one. Because
I think it's one no matter what.
Yes.
And then two depending on
matchup.
The way it goes. What does that series look like? Do you go to a 7th game? Then the personality of that second round series matters.
But I don't think this means Tyler Hero is going to get 4 first-round picks. I don't think this means RJ Barrett's going to get 4 first-round picks in a trade. I don't think this means that. I don't think Tyrese Maxey's going to get traded, although I think he might go for more if he did. But like I don't think it means Anthony Simons is going to go for 4 first-round picks. I don't think everyone's going to be like, oh, who are the shooting guards that can score but are not quite like all-stars or haven't been all-stars, or Tyler Hero's been one, even though he's the worst all-star in the NBA this year. No, like really, like he was even picked last in the thing. Like, but I think even if you look at all the guys in that sort of sphere of these type of architect of player, I don't think they're all suddenly going to go for those type of picks unless it becomes the thing where it's like, what's your equivalent to Contavious Caldwell-Pope, and are you getting off of him too? To your point, I think it's more so like if you're adding Terry Rozier to Tyler Hero and moving them both out. Rozier's an expiring contract, so it's not the same as KCP.
Right.
But then I think that's one where it's like, okay, maybe that becomes a situation where you're moving to, and you're hoping to get more back. But I don't know. I think this is a kind of standalone deal, and then we'll see. I don't know if it's a market setter, and I don't know if all those other guys I mentioned, or if any of them are even going to be moved, to be honest.
Well, exactly. And that's why I was so excited to bring it back to the original point. I was so excited to see the Magic land Desmond Bane because I don't view a lot of players that are similar to him to be available. I think a lot of those guys that are on manageable current NBA contracts that are in the thick of their prime, that are culture guys. So these guys are not headaches in the locker room. In fact, they help you far more than they hurt you. And they play both sides, basically like a semi all-star level 3-and-D player Those guys are not available. Every team wants them. And to get one that's already on contract for several more years at the age of 26, it's hard to do that. And I think the Magic did about as well as they could possibly do given their current situation.
Let's end here. Do you think they gave up too much? Do you think, or do you think it doesn't matter at this point? Because you're trying to win now. But Memphis does get 4 unprotecteds, as we mentioned, a swap. Cole Anthony Jr. is an expiring contract. Cole Anthony Jr. I don't know why I should say that. Cole Anthony. Who's an Anthony Jr. in the NBA? That I just like. Is there not an Anthony Jr.? There's so many juniors now.
No, there's got to be an Anthony Jr. out there
This-
somewhere. But,
I'm
you know,
like,
you were
so-
thinking of Greg Anthony. I understand.
This I've never done that before. I've covered Cole in high school. You know what I mean? Like, because he's from here. I'm like he.
Yesterday was Father's Day. You know, you're thinking of the juniors.
He went to Archbishop Malloy. Shout out to Cole. He played with Moses Brown up here. They were really good, except they didn't win the championship because I don't think their coach was, Anyway, Cole Anthony.
I'm gonna miss Cole, by the way. Cole Anthony was phenomenal with the media. He was so good, so likable. He was the personality of the team. They are a fun kind of collegey group, and they would hang out outside of playing games together and go to UCF games, the local college football team and all that.
Pretty cool. Yeah.
And that was all Cole. Like, Cole was the one putting all of that together. So they, locker room wise, that's a big missing piece, but they just couldn't justify keeping him based on his just the lack of impact that he was making on the basketball team.
Yeah. If he were better, I don't think you'd need a Desmond Bane. That's kind of what it comes down to. You'd probably still get another scorer, but you wouldn't get like a Desmond Bane level of one. You would probably get somebody who doesn't cost as much. So where are you at with what they sent out? It's him, it's KCP, it's all the picks. I think if you're Memphis, you did pretty well here, and you could then pivot and do something else, or just save the draft picks for later. I kind of think this is a win-win, but tell me where you're at in terms of what they gave up.
I'm a little confused by the Memphis side of it, but I also haven't spent nearly as much time really diving into what the Grizzlies are thinking and doing here. I think a lot of it probably has to do with extending Jaren Jackson Jr., and they're kind of trying to find this middle ground between we still want to be competitive, we need to make sure that we have enough money to pay our number 2, but also this team as currently constructed is just not good enough right now. I think the Magic paid what they had to pay. It's expensive, but I'm not willing to call it an overpay because I think this is just what players in their prime that do what Desmond Bane does. I think this is what they cost. And I never thought they were going to get anybody to take that KCP deal. So, yes, expensive. They basically, I'll use an analogy, another great sports talk radioism. They moved into the gated community in the good school zone that's got the pool in the backyard. And you go, did you overpay? Probably. They're a little house poor right now, but they got a great house. And they're going to enjoy it. So yeah. I think to me, that's what this deal is it was expensive, but at the end of the day, if they push deep into the Eastern Conference playoffs, who cares? This is what it costs to be one of the best teams in the NBA.
And I would say healthy before this trade, the defense is, if not championship level, right there. So I'll be curious to see what the over-under is, what their price to win the division is. After all the dust settles, like this is something people should look into maybe in like August. Not quite yet. But yeah, I think it's a fascinating deal. I wonder what Memphis is going to do. Matt seems to be worried that it'll be, instead of Bane being the third banana, it'll be Edey. And if they give him a big contract down the line, we're still 3 years away from that, or 2 years away from that. What was Edey, the first round pick? Yeah, last year.
He was a rookie.
Yeah. So 3 years away from that. We'll see. We'll see. Ultimately, I think it's fascinating. Last thing from me on this. What is the other thing, I guess, that you expect big to come in the NBA that's coming up? Do you think it's going to be Kevin Durant? Like, what do you think is the next big move? Do you think it's Durant or something else?
I think it's probably Giannis. I think that
Still, even with the reporting that he won't potentially ask out per Brian Windhorst.
I still think that if he takes an honest assessment of where his team is at, I think he's got to realize that his prime and potentially the rest of his career could be wasted. So maybe that's an internal conversation for leverage purposes or whatever, but it still feels like that is the kind of move that, hey, we were told at the start of the offseason this is gonna be the craziest one ever. Well, that's not gonna come true unless Giannis moves. So I'm gonna hold. That was Shams that said that. He's as plugged in as they get. So I'm gonna hold firm to that. If we did getting another Kevin Durant move, like I've seen that movie before. I've seen it several times. That doesn't move the needle for me. Kevin Durant's on a new basketball team. Where have I seen that story before? Give me something else. Give me Giannis on the move.
Give me Giannis. Give me Trae Young. Give me Paul George.
I'll give you one that is not so much player related because, I mean, shit, you go back to, again, Luka got traded in the middle of the year. Nary a person saw that coming. So the NBA is wild. I think the team to watch out for, though, is San Antonio. They are as loaded with attractive assets as you could possibly be. And what star around the NBA doesn't want to be in that situation with that 7'3", 7'4" phenom? That is a winning situation. They have the number 2 pick now. They have the rookie of the year in Stephon Castle. They added De'Aaron Fox already. They are so set up for success. And I think they can strike now if they wanted to. So to me, that would be the most dangerous team to watch out for, them and OKC if Indiana wins this series, because then they might be out for blood after that.
And I think the team I'm probably watching the most is maybe the Brooklyn Nets, just because they can choose either we're going to accelerate this because they have the cap space. We're going to accelerate this and try to trade people into our space, trade for people into our space and be good right away, or trade for bad contracts with picks attached to them, which Sean Marks has done in the past to turn them around, which got them ready for the Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving summer, because they did that with a couple different deals. So I wonder what direction they're going to take, because I think they're a team we're going to hear from a lot this summer. And it's either going to be they're going to try to be good right away, or they're going to be the dumping ground where it's like, we'll take back Jeremy Grant if you give us a first. We'll take back, Jonathan Isaac if you give us a first, or like whatever, like those type of contracts. And then eventually they'll turn those into real players and whatever. So they're kind of a swing team where they can dictate, because they have the cards in terms of cap space and they're stockpiling draft picks now. And I have a couple players that I think are interesting too, because they can get something for like a Cam Johnson, for example. I think the Nets are super fascinating, and we'll see how it impacts the rest of the NBA.
Yeah, Cam Johnson's one of those guys who he was a hot candidate at the trade deadline. I think they were dangling him out there and just simply asking for too much. I don't know what exactly it was, but clearly it was an asking price that was too high. Otherwise, I think they already would have moved off of him. The Nets are one of the very few teams that have cap space, so that it's interesting to see what they end up doing with that.
I want to say it was 2 firsts, but I think they can get that. I mean, he has 2 years left on his deal at 21 and 23 billion. I think it's entirely possible that they get that. Okay, we're wrapping up here. Listen to Brandon Kravitz in the zone, 96.9 FM, the game, 3 to 6.
Yep.
Eastern.
You can stream it on the iHeartRadio app wherever you are in the country, by the way.
iHeartRadio app is probably the simplest way to do it. 3 to 6, Monday through Friday. Also, Orlando Magic, when they start playing games again, a pregame host. And you'll be on air today talking about this trade.
That is right. I'll be on the air a lot. In fact, if you subscribe to, or it's part of your sports package, I'll also be on VSiN, the sports betting network, between 2 and 3 p.m. today. and I'll be spending a lot of time talking about this trade and all the other wild things going on in sports.
And you'll hear us together on Buckets from time to time. Speaking of, I will be there tonight. We'll be recapping Game 5 of the NBA Finals, and we'll do something here NBA Finals related at some point, along with something on the draft. And we got a couple fights coming up. Jake Paul's fighting Julio Cesar Chavez Jr.
I don't know how you do it.
We'll cover that. All right, that's it.